Okay, a very good morning to all of you. Actually, I had made a new YouTube channel and I was planning to stream this session in that YouTube channel, but for some reason there was an issue, so I have decided to stream it on the existing channel itself. So today's topic, mugging up is very bad. Is it really bad? I mean, is it bad or is it something which is unnecessarily being given a bad name? So before I start telling you whether mugging up is good, bad, etc., so I just want to say a few things to all of you that when you speak about the holy scriptures of any religion, whether you say Bible or Gita or Quran, so you are aware that there are many people, they are said to know the scriptures by heart, right? So they are said to know the scriptures word by word. So they don't miss a single word. It is unbelievable, but it's true. So, and it happens in almost every religion that there are some people, they know the scriptures word by word, and they are able to reproduce the text exactly in the same way that it is given in the scriptures. And that is how it is supposed to be, because they are holy scriptures. You cannot tamper with the written word in such scriptures. What is written, it is final. So for example, in the Bible you have the 10 commandments, so you cannot alter any word and suggest that the meaning is the same. It has to be said exactly the way it is given in the Bible. So the point is that word by word reproduction of the text is not something very unusual, and it is not something very uncommon. And poetry, for example, if somebody has written a prose or somebody has written a novel or a work of fiction, you can interpret it in your own way. You can reproduce it any way you like. But poetry, you cannot do anything like that, right? You need to reproduce it word by word. So if you are wanting to say a poem, anything, I mean, let's take nursery rhymes for example. So if you know Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, there is a poem, and that poem has to be said word by word the way it is. So you cannot alter any part of the poem, you cannot change any words in that poem. So you have to reproduce it exactly the way it is. So the point is that word by word learning and word by word reproduction of the text is not a very uncommon thing, it is not unusual, and in certain cases, if you don't do it, then the meaning is completely lost. So I gave you the example of scriptures, I gave you the example of poetry. I mean, poetry, if recited by any alteration, it completely loses its charm. So if you are into reciting any kind of poetry, then you have to stick to the written word without any deviation at all. So what I'm trying to say is that word by word reproduction is not something very unusual or uncommon. So maybe we need to start off this session by first of all understanding that there must be some mechanism to reproduce word by word what is written, right? And some people say that it is mugging up. It is mugging up. You have mugged up the whole thing, and that is how you are able to reproduce it word by word. Okay, so if you call it mugging up, there's another word for it, rote learning, right? So what is so bad about it, and why do people keep saying it's bad, right? So I think there is a belief that if you learn something word by word, then automatically it means that you haven't put your mind into it. Automatically it means that you have just taken that stuff which is written on face value and you have forced it on yourself, like you have forcibly imbibed it, like you have thrust it upon yourself. That is how people take it, and that is why mugging up is much maligned. There is not much virtue people find in mugging up, or even if they do, they don't talk about it. Most of the time they denigrate it, that it is a kind of rote learning, it is brainless, absolutely. You are just ramming it down your throat. But the examples which I gave you at the start of this session, those examples suggest that we need to find a way to reproduce what is written, right? And sometimes it has to be done word by word, and I gave you examples of that. So the point is that if it is understood that there are situations and times when you need to reproduce the written word, if that is understood, then what is the problem if you can make an effort to learn whatever is written and reproduce it without any deviation? So what is so wrong about it? So people say that you have stopped using your faculties, you are just trying to ram it down yourself. So I think that what we need to understand is that you read something, you understand the essence of it, right? You try to connect with it in some way, at some level, and then you realize that what you are doing is not mugging up, you are actually not wanting to lose the essence, and that is why you are reproducing it word by word, right? So you realize that if you lose the essence, then that written word doesn't stand for what it is, what actually it is. So you know that you need to capture the essence. So if you deviate even a little bit, then that essence is gone, and therefore you must find a way to reproduce it word by word without any deviation. So when that realization comes to you, then suddenly you don't think of it as rote learning or mugging up. You think of it as carrying it in your memory, in your cognitive memory, as something which you can relate to, because you have put your mind into it, you have understood it, okay, you are able to connect with it at some level. See, for a person to memorize the scriptures, definitely some kind of a spiritual connection is required. So that person is very involved into spirituality. So for that person, at some level, definitely is able to connect with what he is reading and learning, and at some level he is able to relate to that also, and that is how we call it spiritual. That is how that person is able to learn the whole scriptures. And in the same way, when you say poetry, so you understand the essence of that poem, you understand what it is all about, right? You are able to relate to it at some level, and also the fact that the writer has used poetry to express himself. So a person who has written a poem can express himself or herself in many ways, but they have chosen poetry, which is considered a very beautiful way of expressing yourself. So to appreciate that, you must be able to reproduce the poem word by word. So once that realization comes to you, then you don't think of it as rote learning or mugging up. I'll do one thing, since I am into maths and science, so I'll give you an example from maths and science only. You see, in current electricity, which is a physics topic, so there is a very famous Ohm's law, right? It is actually considered the most important part of current electricity, because the entire chapter depends on that. So Ohm's law, people who are in the 10th standard, they are familiar with Ohm's law. People who are in the 12th standard, they need to revisit Ohm's law again. Now, according to Ohm's law, there is a conductor, and the current that is flowing through the conductor is proportional to the potential difference between the ends of the conductor, provided physical conditions and temperature remains constant, right? That is Ohm's law. So this is the statement of Ohm's law. Now, many times I have seen this as a teacher, that the student, they went to the exam and they wrote Ohm's law, but they probably missed something like a small phrase. For example, if you say that Ohm's law states that the current which is flowing through a conductor is proportional to the potential difference across its ends, but you don't say physical conditions are constant, you don't say temperature is constant, or rather you forget to say that. So the teacher penalizes you. And sometimes students complain that the teacher not only penalized me, the teacher actually said that you didn't write exactly what is written in the book, and that is why the teacher penalized me. Now, when this kind of conversation happens, automatically, the spotlight again comes to mugging up, rote learning. Teacher is advocating rote learning. Teacher is advocating mugging up. The teacher is suggesting that you mug up what is written in the text. So ultimately, these kind of give a bad name to, if I say mugging up, then people will say it already has a bad name, but it kind of gives a bad name to learning what is written in your text, and learning it by first understanding why it is so and capturing the essence, and then you feel that if you don't write it word by word, then the essence will be lost. So something like if you are saying a poem, if you change a word, the entire essence of the poem is gone. So in the same way, when you speak about Ohm's law, so you are talking about a conductor. What does Ohm's law talk about? It talks about a conductor. Now a conductor's job is to carry current. So you just talk to yourself, say this to yourself, that I am going to learn Ohm's law. It talks about a conductor, and a conductor is something which is supposed to carry current. Now, any conductor anywhere in any position, will it carry a current? Like I have a conductor, suppose I don't have it right now, but suppose if I hold a copper wire in my hand, so will it carry current? So the point is, any conductor anywhere in any position will not carry a current. In order to have current through it, you must create a potential difference between the two ends. So you have a conductor, if you can somehow create a potential difference between the two ends, then it will carry a current. So that has to be understood. You have a conductor, but it will only carry a current if there is a potential difference between the two ends. Now, that current which is flowing and the potential difference between the two ends, they have a direct proportionality. So if the potential difference is more, the current will be more. If the potential difference is less, the current will be less, right? There is a direct proportionality between the current and the potential difference. That is Ohm's law, right? But that means if the potential difference is more, current is more. If the potential difference is less, current is less. So there is a direct proportionality. So that is Ohm's law. So you have captured the essence, you have connected with the law, and you have understood it in its bare essentials. So you have got it in its bare essentials, and you are able to relate to the law. You are able to connect with the law because you have understood it in its nitty-gritties. There is one thing: is this proportionality always there? Like, is the current and potential difference always proportional, or can there be some exceptions? Like, suppose if I say that when the potential difference is 10 volt, current is 10 ampere. So when potential difference is 20 volt, current is 20 ampere. When potential difference is 30 volt, current is 30 ampere. Is it always like that? No. You must not change the temperature, because when you change the temperature, what happens? That the conductor starts resisting the flow of current. So when you change the temperature, then there is a difference. There is an alteration in the law. And physical conditions. You should not physically damage the conductor or do any modification to the conductor. So physically the conductor has to remain the way it is. So these are very important. You have to say it, because if you don't say it, then the law becomes incomplete. Now the problem happens when teachers insist that you have to write it word by word. The student thinks that the teacher is suggesting that you mug it up and you do rote learning, which automatically implies brainless approach. But that is not what the teacher is suggesting, okay? The teacher is just trying to tell you that you have understood the essence of the law, right? And for your own good, if you reproduce whatever is written in your textbook, then you will not make a single mistake. if you try to write something different from what is written in the book, you may just miss a word or two. What you could do is you could take it as a challenge. You can say that I have understood the law and I will now write it in my own words. But you should not miss any point. So let's now understand this very clearly. In those places where the written word has to be reproduced exactly, like scriptures, poetry, there you have to establish a connect with what you are reading. You have to try and capture the essence. You must be able to relate to it, and then automatically you will find a way to learn it, right? You will realize that if you don't learn it, you will not be able to reproduce it exactly. Number one. Number two, in those places like the Ohm's law example which I gave, where it is not at all compulsory to write the law word by word according to the book. It is not compulsory, right? But even if you use your own words, you must capture the essence. You must give the law in its nitty-gritties. You must not miss a single point. So your paraphrasing might be different from the book or from someone else's, but as long as you maintain that the current is proportional to the potential difference, number one, as long as you maintain that physical conditions should be constant, as long as you maintain that the temperature is a constant, as long as you maintain these things, there is no way any teacher will ever penalize you, right? So I think slowly we are now understanding that why mugging up is maligned, why mugging up has got a bad name. It is because when you are told to learn something, you automatically take it that the person is suggesting that you just brainlessly learn the whole thing, just try to ram it inside your brain somehow, but that is not the truth, right? So your teacher or whoever is advising you to remember the written word is merely trying to suggest that have you got the essence of it? Yes. Are you able to relate to it? Yes. You can visualize whatever I said, visualize there's a conductor with you, etc. So if you are able to do that, then you should be able to write it in such a way that you don't miss a single point. And left to yourself, you may just miss a point. So to be on the safe side, you reproduce exactly what is written in the book. That is what merely the teacher is saying, right? So no teacher will ever tell you that brainlessly learn everything and don't use your head at all. No teacher will ever say that, right? So the point is, the bad name that mugging up has got is because by implication, people assume, oh, now I have to switch off my brain. I should completely put my brain in lock and key. And you know what? There's a very interesting thing I would like to share with all of you. That this there is a branch of science called geology. Okay, so one of my relatives is a geologist, and my relative knows the names of rubies, emeralds, sapphires. He knows the names of more than 100 stones. He can just offhand say the name of more than 100 stones. And so the thing is that recently I had a conversation with my relative, and I found that yes, he could say the name of more than 100 different types of stones. So what has happened is that by virtue of being a geologist, he is exposed to this kind of information all the time, and at some level he is able to connect with it. So one day I asked him that, is it true that you know the name of so many different types of stones? It is simply because of your experience with dealing with such stones, or have you tried to learn some names and learn some of their properties? And you will be surprised that the answer that I got from him was that when he was a student of geology, so he was constantly getting exposed to this kind of information, and he was fascinated by it. There was an allure in this, and he really enjoyed it. Different people have different things which they like to do. So he really enjoyed that, and he realized that he would like to learn and remember those properties and those names, and he would like to carry it in his memory, with the knowledge that in some future date he may require that knowledge, he may not also. but it really captivated his imagination and he really wanted to put his mind into it. And so he went about learning the names and properties of all those different types of stones. So this is very interesting. That means another person in his place, maybe a student of geology, who is not so keen, will say that, oh my god, this is a hell lot of information and I have to learn the whole thing. I have to mug up the whole thing, right? I have to brainlessly enter it inside my brain. So this is what another person may say, but my relative didn't think like that. He thought that this is something which really fascinates him, and he would probably, given a chance, he would like to analyze all these types of stones. So this is what happened, that ultimately my relative, whatever he told me and whatever my experiences of this road learning or mugging up have been, all that put together made me realize that in the end, okay, it's all about trying to, like I said, capture the essence and relating to and establishing a connect. See, I'll give you an example from chemistry. Okay, see, I'm giving you one example from chemistry. See, I am a man of maths and science, so have a look at this reaction. This is a reaction in chemistry. This is copper, this is dilute nitric acid. It gives copper nitrate plus nitric oxide plus water. Okay, I'm giving you one example from chemistry. So this is copper plus dilute nitric acid gives copper nitrate plus nitric oxide plus water. And those of you who have already done this kind of reactions, you would know that basically I have done balancing. I have put a 3 here, I have put a 8 here, 3, 2 and 4. This is for balancing the reaction. Now suppose you are a student and you face such a reaction, and you know that in chemistry you will face many reactions like there will be huge number of reactions. Chemistry is mostly about chemical reactions. So how do you establish a connect with this kind of a reaction? So the first thing about this reaction is that copper is a metal and nitric acid HNO3 is an acid. Metal is usually supposed to react with an acid to give hydrogen gas. That is what a metal is supposed to do, right? So a metal's job is to react with an acid and give out hydrogen gas. That is what metals do, right? Now nitric acid has got a very peculiar feature, that apart from being an acid, it is also a very good oxidizing agent, and therefore nitric acid is one of the exceptional acids where you may not get hydrogen as a result of the reaction, because nitric acid, instead of behaving like an acid, it may behave like an oxidizing agent. Now this reaction is an example of that. So copper plus dilute nitric acid is giving CnO3 voltoids plus NO plus H2O. So what is happening, that copper is getting oxidized to copper nitrate and dilute nitric acid is getting reduced to nitric oxide. So in this reaction, the role of nitric acid has become that of a oxidizing agent. It is not playing the role of an acid. If it was playing the role of an acid, we would have got hydrogen gas, but we are not getting it. So immediately you are able to establish a connect. Immediately you are able to establish some kind of a relation with what you are seeing in front of your eyes. Now this reaction, can you change these numbers 3, 8, 3, 2, 4? Can you change these numbers? You cannot. Can you change these products? You cannot, because this is a factual reaction. Now if you say that, but I have not seen this reaction happening in front of my eyes, like I haven't actually taken copper and dilute nitric acid and reacted them and seen these products, so that means I am basically learning this reaction. I am basically mugging up this reaction. That is what some people say, right? So I am able to see that there is a reaction in front of me, but I am mugging up this. So the point is, that instead of thinking like that, I would bring back the example of my relative, the geologist, that maybe today you haven't done this reaction, but if you are able to relate to it at some level, if you are able to connect with it at some level, with the knowledge that in future you may be doing this reaction, you never know, you may not also. Because see, in our education system, there's a lot of things we learn which we don't use in our future. That is a part and parcel of our education, because education has very broad horizons, and it is unfair to assume that a particular student will be interested only in science or only in humanities or only in commerce, etc. So to keep it broad, education is taught in a very generalistic way, so that you keep your options open, and on a future date, when you are more mature, when you are bordering your teenage years or just out of your teens, you can start planning your career with your favorite stream, right? So keeping that in mind, you will encounter this kind of a reaction. By the way, this reaction is there in 10th standard ICSE chemistry. It is also there in 12th standard P block, this same reaction. So basically, so you have to say to yourself that, okay, I have got the essence of this reaction, and then there's another reaction. Okay, so there is another reaction. Copper plus concentrated nitric acid gives copper nitrate plus NO2 plus H2O. Okay, so these two reactions are giving different products. This reaction is giving copper nitrate plus water plus NO. This is giving copper nitrate plus water plus NO2. So they are giving different products. So again, so it starts bugging your mind. Why is that happening? So you say that means what? The oxidizing nature of nitric acid depends on its concentration also, right? So like I said, keep establishing a connect, keep getting the essence, try to relate with what you are reading, don't be totally detached. Then you will feel that you are simply mugging it up and ramming it down your throat. The moment that feeling comes to you, you will not feel like continuing that text anymore. In fact, you will do it with a lot of stress, and you will feel that I am doing it out of compulsion, because if I don't, then I will not remember it and I will not be able to reproduce it in the exam. Instead of that, like I said, copper, when nitric acid is dilute, right? So at that time, the oxidizing action of nitric acid is a little mild, so you get nitric oxide. But when it is concentrated, the oxidizing action of nitric acid suddenly becomes more, so you get nitrogen dioxide, right? And you cannot change these numbers, they are called stoichiometric coefficients. But if you are able to relate with this reaction the way I told you, then you will not feel so much stress in remembering. By the way, those of you who are familiar, you don't have to remember these numbers, because this is a method called balancing a reaction, which is pretty easy, and balancing hardly takes 1 or 2 minutes. So you don't have to remember these numbers, you can just write the reaction and within 2 minutes you can balance it. So teachers of chemistry, they don't generally tell the students that remember the coefficients. Generally it is not an advisable thing. You must remember the reaction. The coefficients you can easily do it by balancing, which is hardly a 2-minute job. It is not a very complex job. So I think this example of chemistry and the example of Ohm's law which I gave, and those examples which I earlier gave about the scriptures and poetry, I think I have conveyed to all of you that people have automatically taken mugging up to mean something very, very derogatory, something. In fact, it has become almost fashionable to say that I can't mug up. You know, two students having a conversation, and one of them says that I can't mug up, and then the other person says, yeah, I mean, mugging up is not for me, like I can't mug up at all, I mean, I just can't mug up. So it has almost become trendy or fashionable to say that, and people who are able to do it or who do it, okay, they often keep quiet because they know that they are not a part of the crowd. So I'm not trying to say that people who mug up are necessarily better. People who don't mug up, whether they are doing the right thing. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just trying to say that every student has to somehow establish a connect with what they are studying and reading. And once you do that, you will not think of it as something you're cramming down your brain. You will find that the more you relate to what you're studying, the more you relate to what you're reading, it will appear that you are imbibing it naturally. And if you happen to know any person who knows the scriptures by heart, you can actually talk to such people and you will find this is exactly how they learn the entire scriptures. If you happen to know any people like this, you can actually talk to them. Like I spoke to my uncle who is a geologist, and that conversation, it opened the doors of a new kind of thought for me, because I understood what is the psyche of people who try to learn stuff after speaking to my relative who is a geologist. So if you know any person who has very good memory, who is able to, for example, Hanuman Chalisa, there are a lot of people who know Hanuman Chalisa by heart. So if you know such people, you talk to them, you will realize that they have established a connect, and that makes it easy for them to remember it. So this is my advice to all of you. Let us not be extremely one-sided in our opinion on this topic. Let us understand that sometimes the written word has to be reproduced verbatim, and sometimes for your own good, it is better you reproduce the written word verbatim, otherwise you will miss the essence. If you are very sure that you will not miss the essence and still you will be able to say it in your own words, I think you should go for it. And I give you my assurance that no teacher will ever dissuade you or discourage you, because if the teacher sees that you have captured the essence of the topic, the teacher will in fact encourage you. They will never discourage you and say that you have missed the plot and you have written something on your own. They won't say it. But if you actually miss something, the teacher will point it out. And then, like I said, the entire cycle of, oh, they are asking me to mug up will start. That should not happen. So I think I have more or less conveyed to all of you my views on this topic. And if you have any topics which you would like me to speak about in the 6:30 a.m. sessions, you can let me know. You can write it in the comments also, or you can let me know by message also. And I'll conclude this session, and I hope that all of you, after leaving this session, will not think about learning as merely rote learning and simply mugging up without any effort or brains at all. And rather you will understand that you have to somehow establish a connect with it and relate to it. Okay, thanks a lot. I'll conclude this session. Bye all of you.